Hello. So I just wrapped up my last video explaining how to get like the bare minimum of getting your motorcycle license to enter this world. So now I'm going to go into a little bit of detail. You know, you have your motorcycle license, you finally got it, now what? A few considerations. Top of mind is probably, what bike should I get? Do you want a sport bike? Do you want a dual sport? Do you want a big touring bike that's comfy so you can go thousands of miles? Do you want a little Grom? Do you want something cute and small to put around like a downtown area or something? And something I've said before and I keep saying is allow your geography to dictate what kind of motorcycle you get. So let's talk about them a little bit. Let's start small. Let's start with the Groms, the Super Cubs, like the 125, 150s. These are light bikes, they're small, they're lighthearted, they're fun, and they don't go very fast. So maybe on these bikes you might get at a top speed of 55, and that they might vary a little bit, but from like 30 miles per hour to like 55, so not really interstate speeds. You get a small bike that's below say 300 cc's, and you're gonna want to stay off the interstate. So if you are planning to commute, you have interstate miles to go, you would want something a little bit bigger. But if you're on, you know, roads like this, country back roads, if you live in a downtown area and you never really leave it, so that's kind of the first level, the like 120, the 125s up to 300, and then you can kind of go 300 like I had in my R3. You have the 400s, the 500s, and the 650s are kind of in a class of their own. Because there are several, I kind of put them in the like 300 to 500 class, because some 650s like the KLR or the DR 650, they're dual sport bikes, but you see, if you haven't had much of an exposure to CCs, you would think, oh, 650, that's faster than a 600. No, and it's just something you don't know until you know. But, oh, Rottweiler. But like 300, 400, 500, 650s, they can be 1 or 2 cylinders, and these are a little bit stronger than the 150s, and you can start to get on the interstate with them. But it also depends on how far you're going to go with a 650 or a 300. Because on my R3, it was a 300, but it was also a sport bike, so it was geared to go, it didn't have as much of the low-end grunt and power that a dual sport 650 would have, but it had the gearing that allowed it to go interstate speeds comfortably. And since it was a 2-cylinder and it was a low cc, while I could do interstate speeds, and I have done the interstate for several hours on my 300, it's a little bit buzzy compared to a 3 or a 4-cylinder. So that's kind of the next class of 300, 400, 500, 650s. I'll put 600s kind of in a class of their own. The inline 4 600s. This is the Gixxer 600. This is the Ninja 636, the Honda CBR 600RR. These are inline 4-cylinder. Turkey! Lots of turkeys! Ah, they're everywhere! These are 4-cylinder, smooth, fast, powerful motorcycles that maybe you could get on one as a beginner, but the thing that I think is so important about starting on, say, like a sub 500 or maybe a 650 is the muscle memory. You can't account for what you're going to do in an emergency situation if you haven't developed the muscle memory. And I think that's so important. My first road bike was a Honda Shadow 700. It was a cruiser, and I rode that for a few years. And then I took kind of a 10-year break, and last summer I picked up an R3, which is a 300, a 700 cruiser versus a 300 sport bike. So even though it was a 300, it was a sport bike, and it was tuned differently, and it was faster than my 700, but it was no 600. I'm glad I started on a 300 even though I had experience on a 700, because getting back into the sport and having a 300 that was more powerful than the cruiser 700, I scared myself a few times. Even though I had ridden, I was familiar, I had some of the muscle memory, I was getting back into it though. Since I had taken a break, those skills were very rusty. And even on a 300, there were a few times where I was grateful that I did not have more power, because it got away from me a little bit. Maybe I cooked a turn too hard, I went too fast into a turn. So I'm glad that I started back on a 300, because I was able to reestablish the muscle memory, and it didn't get away from me as easily as something like a 600 could have after coming back into the sport after so long. So that's a 600, and anything 600 or above, I would advise to stay away from as a beginner, because you don't want to scare yourself. You want to have a manageable amount of power, because you want to ease into this sport. You want to take your time and enjoy yourself. You don't want to be like stressing about power management. It'll suck the fun out of it. And of course, after that, you have your 600s, you've got 700s, you've got the triples, you have the leader bikes, which is, I have never been on a leader bike. I plan to eventually, but I can't imagine the power that I can't imagine what that must be like. Going from a 300 to this was mind-boggling enough. To know that there's something with even more power out there, like, blows my mind. So we've talked about a little bit about motorcycles. We've talked about the engine displacements. Now you have what kind of motorcycle you want to get. Do you want something strictly for street? Do you want something that you can take off-road? Do you want something that you can kind of just cruise around on, don't worry about it? There are a few different types. So the Gixxer 600, this bike is a sport bike. It's tight, my knees are way up close to my body, I'm hunched over, my butt is back, and I have to squeeze the tank with my legs and use my back to relieve some pressure off of my wrists, because that's where the weight's gonna go if I don't engage my back. And the virtue of sport bikes is that everything is very tight. The suspension is tight, the steering's tight, it's a fast bike, and it's really good for like country roads. It's good for the interstate because it's got plenty of power to stay in safe areas when you're navigating around cars. And so it's a very engaging bike. It's not really for, I'd say it's not for a relaxing, it's a less relaxing experience. It's a very engaging experience where you're like kind of in an attack position, crouched over the tank, and you're like in attack mode. It just feels really good to go through corners. It's a very engaging experience. I'll leave it at that. And then you've got, what is this coming up? Is that a cruiser? Yeah, it's a cruiser. Then you've got bikes like that, and it's a much more upright position. The handlebars are much higher, and you're just kind of sitting, and it's more comfortable. The pressure isn't on your wrists. You don't have to engage as much as your body because you're more upright, and it's a cruiser. Like, you're just cruising, enjoying your day, hanging out, maybe going to get some coffee. It's a more relaxed experience, and I would say that's a heavier bike than this, which the suspension will be different, and it'll offer a smoother ride. Okay, so that's a sport bike, it's cruisers. Let's talk about dual sports. dual sports, the way, and I guess there's a little overlap between like dual sports and adventure bikes. But a dual sport is something, it generally has like knobby tires and high suspension, like high clearance, and suspension that's able to take off-road conditions like rocks, mud, but it is geared geared to be able to handle on-road speeds. And it's also street legal. It's got the turn signals and the brake lights and all that good stuff that makes it street legal. But they're not as steady on the interstate at higher speeds. They're usually a little thinner and the wind blows them around a little bit. They're lighter, so it's a trade-off. It's not as good at the higher speeds like the interstate. It's doable, but you also get that off-road capability. Okay, so that's dual sports. Adventure bikes. Adventure bikes are like big dual sports, almost. They're heavier, they're more powerful. They're meant to be able to kind of get you to an off-road destination if you want to say you live like 2 hours away from a really cool, say you live 2 hours away from a BDR, the backcountry discovery route, and you want to take the interstate to get there. Say you took a long weekend, but you want to spend as little time getting there as possible so that you can spend all your time on the BDR instead of just traveling to and fro. That would be, I think, an adventure bike case where it's more powerful, it handles the interstate better than a dual sport, but it also has the off-road capabilities of a dual sport. So those are adventure bikes. Tenere comes to mind. So street bikes, dual sports, adventure bikes, and then you have touring bikes. These are the big, heavy, comfy, like when I think touring bike, I think Goldwing. The Honda Goldwing. It's a 6-cylinder beast that you conquer the world's interstates with. You can't really take it off-road, but it's just something you plop down on to cruise across the country and have a great time. Gonna be lots of cyclists out today. And then you have kind of the standards and the smaller bikes. The naked bikes, more upright position, you can put saddlebags on them. And then the smaller kind of Groms and like Honda Metropolitans and Super Cubs, kind of the smaller displacements that are good for just cruising around, not at a high speed, but just getting from point A to B in maybe a general like downtown area or just a few miles here and there. So what do you choose? I go back to geography. If you know you have to take the interstate, maybe you want to use your motorcycle and commute to work or see family far away, and you know you'll be using the interstate a lot, don't get a dual sport. Or if you live out in the country and you don't really have much reason to use the interstate, and maybe you live close to farmland or you live close to a BDR route, you can try out a dual sport. Maybe you live downtown. Don't get a big, heavy sport bike or a touring bike if you're going to be like scooting around downtown. It's a lot of weight to throw around. It's a lot of power to manage in one block at a time traffic. Or two. I'm not your mom. Just a few things to consider when thinking about what motorcycle you're wanting to get. Okay, let's talk about gear. Now, the minimum is, of course, a helmet, but I absolutely advocate for wearing more than that. It's very rare that I don't go out with my boots, jacket, gloves, helmet. Sometimes I wear my pants. I need to get better. I need to get some pants that are more comfortable with armor padding in them, because that's important too. And that brings me to my next point, like, buy gear that you will wear. Buy gear that you think looks cool. Buy gear that's comfortable. Because if it's not comfortable, and like this jacket is mesh, it's a little hot outside, but there's so much airflow coming through this jacket, and it's easier for me to wear on a hot day because it's cooler than a more constricting, like no airflow jacket would be. So yeah, buy gear you like, buy gear that's cool, and it'll keep you safer. And then last thing, get out and engage with the community. Go to bike nights, go to Cars and Coffee. You'll meet some great people, and there's nothing better than riding with a group of your friends. Maybe you meet at a bike night and then you split off and you go eat together and you start making friends that way. It's so easy to connect with people at meets because not everybody rides a motorcycle, and it's such a strong piece to engage with other people about, and it's very easy to talk to others when you both share this passion. Okay, I've talked long enough. I hope this helps. I hope, good luck on your journey. I was where you are once upon a time, and I remember being so excited and so thrilled to enter this world. So good luck. Like, subscribe, let me know what you think in the comments or any other questions you have, and maybe I'll see you on the road.